Alrighty everyone, hello, and today we're going to talk about our herb of the month, which is actually fennel. So the fennel root is a pretty interesting plant. It looks kind of wonky. It's almost like a Pokemon version of celery or carrots if you want to think about it. But if you've ever been to the grocery store and looked up and seen this big white bulb thing with a bunch of green stuff coming out of it, that is fennel, and you can use it for a lot of different things. In the lore of fennel, this is something that comes out of like the southern, Mediterranean area of Europe as well as Asia Minor. And it's something that in folklore was pretty heavily tied also to Greece, because there are some Greek myths of, say, Prometheus sneaking fire to humanity in a stalk of fennel. It's a pretty historically, relevant plant. It's one that people have used for a long time. In Egypt, it was used as a medicine. In ancient China as well, it was thought to relieve pain from snake bites and be a medicine for snake bites. And all throughout different cultures, it's also been used to ward away evil. So naturally, the magical uses of fennel do include hanging a bit of the sprigs over your doorway to ward off evil spirits, and it can be used in conjunction with a lot of other items as a tea or something, or some kind of cooked item, to provide also purification, healing, and more protection. It's like if an onion and anise had a baby, honestly, when we think about just the structure of it and also what it does, right? Purification, healing, and protection. These are the main things of fennel, and that includes the fennel seeds. Because while you may not know what to do with this odd-looking bulb thing, it turns out that you can actually just get a bottle of fennel seeds like so, and you can use them for all kinds of different things. This, as well as caraway seeds, are things that I like to put in sauces, in breads, in soups, or anything like that, because they bring this really light anise flavor to a dish. You might also make a tea out of the leaves or the seeds, which can do a similar thing. And also, just for a little bit of extra lore, in the old days when people would fast for Lent, it's said that chewing on a bit of these seeds would help stave off some hunger. It is a very particular flavor, so it's definitely something that I would consider checking out before you buy a bunch. Maybe you can try something that has fennel in it, but when you do get it, it does have some really nice qualities for just, brightening up a dish with that nice, almost licoricey anise flavor, right? You can smell it even just from the seeds, and it's something that makes a really nice bright pop of flavor in any kind of dish you want to use it in. So it's a pretty straightforward thing to use when it comes to cooking it, although if you are somehow using this giant bulb, you don't want to cook it all the way. That's one of the most important things. You can eat this thing raw, you can eat this thing cooked enough, but if you cook it too much, it will get tough and very hard to chew. So if you're going to use this, definitely make sure that you know how to cook it and you know where to put it. It can be really nice, though, since it's such a hearty vegetable, to grill it up alongside fish or other kinds of things like that and have a nice crunchy but still light and flavorful addition to that fish. And here's some fun medicinal facts. As always, do not replace any of your doctor's recommendations or prescriptions with herbal medicine, but if, say, you have a little bit of gas from after dinner, or you find that your stomach's a little bit upset from whatever you ate, fennel, including the seeds and the leaves, does have something of a carminative effect, which means that it actually helps reduce the amount of gas, bust it up a little bit, that you might develop from a particularly fiber-heavy or otherwise carb-heavy meal. This is why you may notice if you go to certain restaurants that you will find a little bowl of caraway or fennel seeds alongside some other licorice chips. This is especially something you'll notice in Indian restaurants, for instance, and that's because, again, these help bust up gas after a meal. So we tend to swallow a lot of air when we eat, and also just the foods themselves, things like peas or beans or lentils, can produce a lot of gas, and that's why after a good meal, have some of these seeds around, have a little bit of other candies like this around. It can really help you with some of that discomfort. The oil itself is also something of a antispasmodic, antimicrobial, everything like that, but the essential oil of fennel and fennel oil in general can be dangerous in certain amounts. So make sure that you are very, very, very confident in what you're doing before you start using things for medicinal purposes in general. Obviously, if you just have like a couple seeds after dinner, or if you make a tea out of the leaves or the seeds, it will likely be fine. But always be sure to check that you are not allergic and that you don't have any medications that might mess with this as well. Because, say, for me, if I'm on hormonal birth control, fennel is one of the things that's said to potentially mess with that. So this is something that you really can't take in large doses or in large amounts, especially since we have such shaky research on whether or not this actually affects it. You just want to be safer rather than sorry, and maybe avoid putting this as much in your food. I don't use this very often, but when I have used it, I made sure to not use too much of it, right? You know, we're not pouring half a bottle into a loaf of bread or something like that, just a little bit for the flavor's sake. When it comes to medications that are like life vital, do not mess with it at all. For instance, some blood pressure medications mess up when you have grapefruit or something. Don't mess with that. Do not mess with things like that ever. But given that it is Virgo season, fennel is a really good herb for Virgos. It's something that is protective, calming, it has a beautiful, light, fresh flavor, and it is something that, when you include it in your meals, can add that extra kick, that extra special note that may have people asking you what your secret ingredient is in your next dish. So with all that said, I do hope you guys get a chance to check it out, whether as dried seeds like that, whether as a tea, whether as just a big old bulb itself if you manage to find it in your supermarkets. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. See ya! By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out.